Bobby White's whole life fell apart in September 2015. He lost his career. His future vanished. In one morning, everything he had worked so hard to build over the past 20 years vanished. But everyone who knew Bobby was taken aback by what he did next. He persisted. He didn't back down. No one anticipated what he did. As a result of that choice, one of the largest sailing channels on YouTube has hundreds of thousands of subscribers. However, Bobby is currently experiencing something different, something that might ruin everything he's created. Will history repeat itself, we wonder? Let's begin with the recent event. Because 2025 was a tough year for Bobby White. Bobby shocked his audience with a video he posted at the beginning of 2025. Bobby and his fiancée had broken up after years of dating. For years, the channel's identity had been shaped by their connection. Watchers followed their journeys across islands and oceans, saw them sail together, and watched them weather storms together. But now it's gone. Bobby abruptly stopped going into great detail about what went wrong. He was evasive, stating that they were now in different phases of life, that things had changed, and that it was time to move on independently. It was the type of calculated, professional statement individuals make when they don't want to offend anyone or discuss personal matters in public. However, his admirers could see the weariness and disappointment. Millions of people to view, evaluate, and comment on. Every viewer has a viewpoint. Each subscriber believes they have a right to know the truth. Strangers pretend to be detectives, psychoanalysts, and relationship counselors in the comment area, which turns into a courtroom. Was it the way of life, the never-ending sailing, the never-ending stream of new crew members coming and going, or the stress of managing a YouTube channel where every second had to be captured, edited, and made profitable? Or was it something easier? Two individuals who were growing apart, choosing various routes, and discovering that their goals in life were different. We're not sure. Bobby didn't say anything, and perhaps that's okay. Even if you live your life on camera, sometimes some things should remain private. But is the separation the result of something sinister? Was there anything Bobby did? We do know, however, that Bobby had to keep going. Sailing drawings are no longer just a pastime, so he had to continue filming and sharing. It's a company, a brand, and a full-time job that sustains his way of life, covers his expenses, finances his boats, and hires personnel. When your heart breaks, you can't just stop. With hundreds of thousands of people anticipating your next video, you can't take a month off to grieve. Bobby followed his usual course of action. He continued to go forward, continue to film, and continue to sail. Here's the problem about Bobby White, though. He had previously experienced disappointment, loss, and the disintegration of everything. He has previously been here, is familiar with this area, possesses the ability to convert suffering into meaning and catastrophe into opportunity. Because Bobby has a habit of using the most difficult times in his life to create something. Allow us to transport you to September of 2015. The dream was being lived by Bobby White, a corporate pilot making good money, touring the world, and enjoying the kind of life most people can only dream of, is piloting Gulfstream jets for a wealthy family, transporting them to vacation properties throughout the Caribbean and the United States. He had developed that career over the course of 20 years, spent 4 years working abroad in Nigeria, then another year in Dubai before returning to Texas and landing the ideal job. He was accomplished, well off, and in his 30s. Everything appeared to be ideal. Then he woke up with a really bad headache one morning in September 2015. Not the typical variety caused by excessive alcohol consumption or poor sleep. This was different, crushing, the kind that gives you the impression that your skull is cracking from the inside out. Behind his eyes, pressure was growing. His neck was radiating pain. Bobby acted as most people would. I grabbed some ibuprofen from the medicine cabinet, gulped the pills, and assumed it would go away in an hour or two. Just a terrible headache. There's nothing to worry about. In order to text his then-girlfriend, he went to get his phone, inform her of his poor health. Basic communication, a straightforward message, something he had done millions of times before. At that moment, he became aware that something was seriously wrong. He was illiterate. The messages on his phone appeared to be nonsensical, total bullshit. The screen is filled with letters. Suddenly, words that ought to have made sense were meaningless. What his eyes were seeing was too much for his brain to comprehend. Bobby massaged his eyes, blinked hard, tried again, and continued to stare at the phone. Nothing was altered. The words didn't mean anything. His brain was still damaged. He was overcome with fear, because Bobby saw right away that this was more than a headache. This was something grave, tragic, and possibly lethal. Strokes don't use sirens to signal themselves. While you're still awake enough to witness it, they steal parts of you and infiltrate stealthily. Bobby had taken the blood thinner ibuprofen without realizing that a brain bleed was occurring inside his skull. The ibuprofen had the potential to kill him, worsen the bleeding, and put an end to everything there. Bobby, however, maintained his composure and drove himself to an urgent care center. They hurried him to a hospital after taking one glance at him. It was verified by a CAT scan. Hemorrhaging stroke. His brain was inundated with blood. The type of stroke that causes death or irreversible disability. Bobby lived, but his career as a pilot didn't. After a hemorrhagic stroke, you are not permitted to fly commercial airplanes. Too unsafe, too risky. You won't be cleared by the FAA. You will not be covered by insurance companies. It's finished. 20 years of labor are over. As simple as that. A single morning, a headache, a stroke, and a career destroyed. The majority of individuals would have been lost, ruined, and devastated. When your whole identity is stolen, how do you respond? When your life's purpose abruptly becomes unachievable. One day you wake up, and everything that made you who you were is gone. Bobby had the option to give up. Disability may have been collected, could have turned back into regret and resentment, could have lamented what he had lost for the remainder of his life. However, he didn't. He asked himself another question instead. What can I do if I can no longer fly? At that point, he discovered sailing. Back in Texas, Bobby had sailed a lake. During his flying days, he had chartered boats in the Caribbean. Just having fun, nothing serious. However, he has since begun to watch sailing-related YouTube channels. Found channels such as SV Delos and Sailing El Vagabond, seen ordinary folks earning a living by sailing around the world and recording their experiences. After thinking, if they can do it, why can't I? Bobby took a choice that everyone who knew him felt was completely crazy. Everything he owned was sold. He sold everything he owned, save for a few clothing, and purchased a sailboat. The 37-foot vessel was constructed in 1984. It was a simple, older boat, but it cost him $24,000, plus an additional $4,000 for improvements to make it relatively seaworthy. It was reasonably priced, although it wasn't exactly a luxury yacht or one designed for ocean travel. It would float, and it was him. He gave it the moniker Rough Seas. After purchasing Rough Seas, Bobby and his buddy Megan sailed from Galveston Bay within a month. They were making rookie mistakes, learning everything on the fly, and had no idea what they were doing. However, they managed to cross the Gulf of Mexico in 7 days, reached the Florida Keys without sinking, and then proceeded into the U.S. Virgin Islands via the Bahamas. As he went along, Bobby was learning how to navigate, comprehend wind patterns, deal with equipment malfunctions, make mistakes, and record everything with whatever camera gear he could afford. His initial strategy was straightforward and unassuming. Sail for a year, sell the boat, use the experience to land a crew position on someone else's ship, and perhaps use YouTube earnings to cover part of the costs if the channel gained any popularity. That was all. He's just a man attempting to rebuild his life after losing everything, with no lofty goals or huge scheme to become a YouTube celebrity. However, life had other ideas. Bobby met someone at a regatta on St. Thomas, the U.S. Virgin Islands, who would permanently alter the course of Sailing Doodles. Laura was her name. As a traveling nurse, she was employed there. They were introduced on Instagram via a mutual acquaintance. It was almost poetry in its irony. Laura worked as an intensive care unit nurse with a focus on stroke patients. She devoted her days to treating patients who had experienced the same medical emergency that had ended Bobby's flying career. She was aware of the difficulties, the recuperation, and the reconstruction required following brain damage. Laura was amazed when she heard Bobby's story. The majority of stroke survivors she cared for had difficulty adjusting. Many gave up and lived with degraded quality. Let them be defined by the stroke. Bobby, however, had taken the opposite action, refused to let his injury keep him out of action. In fact, the stroke had empowered him, allowing him to follow a dream that he would not have otherwise. Laura made the decision to follow him, began reading Sailing Doodles, and observed as Bobby gained confidence, learnt to sail, made mistakes, and eventually decided she wanted to join the journey. Laura was only supposed to crew for 2 months, then accompany Bobby for a portion of the voyage before returning to Florida to resume her nursing career. For 10 years, she had been searching for someone who was interested in sailing. This was her opportunity. Maybe 3 months, maybe 2. Then we returned to reality. However, 2 months became years. Laura became enamored. The camaraderie, independence, adventure, and sailing lifestyle. She had no desire to return to nursing. I didn't want to exchange this for working nights in an intensive care unit. So she stayed, joined Bobby as a partner, both in the water and on the boat. Together, they transformed Sailing Sketches into something more than either of them had anticipated. People were moved by Bobby's narrative, his sincerity, and his readiness to share his failures, difficulties, and learning curve. Being flawless wasn't the goal of Sailing Doodles. It was about being authentic, recording the real experience of living on a boat and learning to sail. And it was adored by viewers. Views and subscriptions both grew. Bobby began earning enough money to pay for his living expenses. The channel was operational. The plan was taking shape. Then, in September 2017, Puerto Rico was struck by Hurricane Maria. While taking a job carrying a different boat, a lagoon 440 from Street Martin to Florida, Bobby had left heavy waves there in June. He was under contract to sell Rough Seas. Had a buyer in line. Everything was set up. Then, at the last minute, the buyer pulled out. As a result, Puerto Rico was waiting in choppy seas when Hurricane Maria, a powerful Category 5 hurricane, made landfall. In addition to causing rough water damage, the hurricane nearly wrecked her. The mast shattered totally as it snapped. Significant damage, water intrusion, and structural problems were experienced by the hull. Bobby's entire post-stroke rebirth was symbolized by the boat he had poured his heart and soul into, but it was destroyed. Bobby's living expenses were now being paid for by Sailing Doodles. He was publishing once a week, developing an audience, and becoming more at ease when sailing. However, Bobby lacked the funds to purchase a new boat due to the devastation caused by rough seas. Unable to pay for her replacement, most would have given up. Bobby persisted. Rather, he turned around. I considered making a general travel blog out of Sailing Doodles. Decided to go to Thailand initially. In September 2017, I took a flight there. At that point, opportunity unexpectedly knocked. Bobby was advised by a YouTube user to get in touch with Ron Puston, the owner of Gulf Charters, and a Thai island spirit boat manufacturing business. Bobby contacted him and asked if he could tour the facilities, conduct an interview with Ron, and create some content. Ron concurred. Bobby recorded the tour and uploaded the footage. In the first few days, it had 50,000 views. Enormous figures for a tiny channel. And Ron and Bobby started chatting during that visit. Ron said that he was having trouble. He needed to return to Thailand with a yacht that had been sitting in Vancouver for 3 years. White Squall is a 50-foot bento. No one desired to take her on a Pacific voyage. Too much labor, too long, and too risky. Ron offered Bobby something. The boat is yours for free if you bring White Squall Thailand before August 2018. Just make sure she arrives on time and securely. Bobby found it hard to believe. A free 50 FFT bento that is significantly more valuable than the devastated rough waves. He only needed to sail it half the way around the globe. He replied right away, yes. Currently, one of the most popular sailing channels on YouTube is Sailing Doodles. Each month, there are millions of views and hundreds of thousands of subscribers. The Island Spirit 525E, a brand new hybrid electric catamaran that Bobby currently sails, is far more valuable than the original boat he purchased in 2016. He survived a devastating transmission fire that required Coast Guard rescue, sailed the entire Caribbean, cruised the Mediterranean, sailed coastal Canada, crossed the Pacific Ocean to Polynesia, documented disasters like Hurricane Maria destroying his first boat, and built a whole business empire around sailing content. However, fame attracts criticism, and Sailing Doodles has been involved in a number of scandals. The revolving cast of young female crew members is the perennial topic of criticism. There are fresh faces every season. Every few months, a new person moves in and someone else departs. Additionally, they are nearly always youthful, pretty, and prominently displayed in video titles and thumbnails. Critics refer to it as eye candy. Let's say Bobby prefers women in bikinis to real sailing footage. That sailing doodling vlog is less about sailing instruction and more about lifestyle. That people watch this channel for the women rather than the sailing. Is that reasonable? Is it true? Or are people simply loving information about tropical sailing that features young, fit people dressed in typical beach attire? You inform us. Leave a comment with your ideas. The dynamics of the crew come next. There are concerns about the high turnover rate. Why do so many members of the staff go so soon? Online remarks from former crew members have been enigmatic. In Bobby's videos and podcasts, he talked about a situation that didn't work out and the criticism from former crew members. Some have departed without warning. There have been reports of sailing drawings showing up in secret Facebook groups where female sailors are allegedly cautioning one another about specific boats and crews. Posts that refer to Bobby as a creep, accuse him of acting aggressively, make allegations that he drinks excessively while on camera, and mention pressure to have sex. Is this the reason his girlfriend broke up with him? Here's the crucial point, though. These are unsubstantiated assertions made in internet forums and anonymous internet rumors. There are only rumors, gossip, and conjecture in the sailing world. There are no public reports, lawsuits, formal declarations, or identified accusations on file. What is the reality then? Is Bobby White a predator who entices young women to board his yacht through his YouTube channel? Or is he just a successful YouTuber who uses gorgeous crew members because that's how the business operates and what attracts views? Are former crew members departing due to harassment? Or the fact that it's more difficult than it seems to live aboard a boat with cameras on all the time? These circumstances are complex, confusing, and full of dynamics that make it impossible to determine the truth from a distance. Therefore, we don't know, and perhaps we can't. Bobby has discussed crew drama in podcasts and Q&A videos. He has always taken a constructive stance. He just states that individuals leave for different reasons, that this lifestyle isn't for everyone, that he wishes everyone well. and that he has no ill will toward anyone. He doesn't mention names, disparage the prior crew, or go into specifics. Is that real, or is the PR being handled carefully? You make the decision once more. What are your thoughts? Bobby is unable to get past controversy. The question of safety is still another significant one. In recordings, seasoned sailors have attacked Bobby's methods, pointing out that he doesn't use tethers, jacklines, or life jackets during crossings, that he records from perilous angles, such as standing on the bowsprit by himself. There is a lot of drinking on camera. Beer 30 situations that could be entertaining for spectators yet raise safety concerns. Perhaps they have a point, given the November 2020 boat fire. Bobby and his crew were traveling in harsh conditions on the night of November 15th on NY Dogs, his 56-foot Tatachia catch. The weather tested both boats and sailors, with strong waves and winds over 40 knots. The transmission experienced a catastrophic failure late that evening. Not a small malfunction. It's not something that can be fixed and continued. Disastrous. It's the kind of failure that occurs under the worst circumstances and at the worst time. The gearbox exploded. The stench of burning tires and electrical parts, smoke filling the cabin, and flames in the engine room. And the waves were crashing over the deck while they were miles offshore in 40-knot winds. Every sailor's worst nightmare is a boat fire. You are unable to evacuate to the street or call the fire department. Although there is water all around you, the boat, your only source of safety, is burning. The fire becomes bigger. You are choked by the smoke. As a result of the fire-damaging systems and seals, the boat begins to absorb water. Suddenly, you're battling floods in addition to flames. While the crew used extinguishers to fight the fire, Bobby seized the radio and dialed the Coast Guard. They were discovered in the dark and inclement weather by the Coast Guard, who then launched a rescue and saved their lives. Despite the boat's damage, insurance dropped another bomb. Bobby had to pay the full $100,000 repair price since they refused to pay for it. The sailing community was quick to criticize. They claimed that this was proof of his lack of preparedness, insufficient safety procedures, and dangerous behavior ultimately catching up with him. A YouTuber who prioritizes views over teamwork. Critics saw the boat fire as a warning about what happens when content takes precedence over safety. Sailors with experience examined the event, identified errors, and questioned choices. Why was there so much equipment on deck of the boat during bad weather? Why weren't the right safety precautions taken? What caused the transmission's catastrophic failure? What was the neglected maintenance? However, Bobby made even that catastrophe into material by releasing a 35-minute documentary detailing the whole experience, putting it behind a paywall, and requested that viewers contribute what they believed to be reasonable to help pay for repairs. He used tragedy as a teaching opportunity and a source of income. Bobby, you're classic. But is that shrewd business or taking advantage of a risky circumstance? He was commended by other sailors for posting the video, saying it teaches other sailors what not to do. He was chastised by others for profiting from a Coast Guard rescue and failing to accept greater accountability for the errors that caused the fire. What are you standing at? Should safety content be provided for free, or was Bobby justified in charging for that video? Here we are then. Bobby White is once more at a fork in the road. He suffered a stroke that put an end to his flying career. From nothing, a successful YouTube channel was created, survived a Coast Guard rescue and a boat fire, destroyed his first boat while navigating Hurricane Maria, endured online rumors and numerous crew changes. Even while he continues to create content for hundreds of thousands of followers, he is currently dealing with a public split. Can he continue? That is the question. Will Sailing Doodles be able to weather the controversy? Can Bobby continue to be successful while dealing with the rumors and whispers that accompany his channel? Or is something going to